he's like, you're gonna go to school in Colorado, this tiny little Christian school outside Denver. And I was like, okay, Lord, like, I trust you. And it was hard. I didn't like it first semester. I wanted to go home, but I was like, no, the Lord has called me here. And so I'm going to stay and see what happens.
Welcome to this week's episode of the His Hill Podcast. My name is Kelly Doherty, and I'm your host. I have with me today an alumni from what year?
2021 to 2023.
That's right. She did 2 years. This is Ashlyn Chapman, and you're from Dallas, aren't you?
I am, just north of it, McKinney specifically.
Okay, but right now you're living in Colorado.
Yes, it's in Lakewood, Colorado, which is about 15 minutes from Denver. I go to Colorado Christian University.
Okay, good. Do you ever get up to Ravencrest?
I have been to both Estes Park and Winter Park for separate occasions, but have never actually gone up to the Torchbearers.
Oh, so you haven't seen Timberline either. Okay.
I haven't, no.
All right, okay. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. And first of all, for the listener, we're getting right into this and going because Ashlyn has only got a short break. She's here for camp. And are you a counselor?
I am, yeah.
I didn't even know she was here until today. I was looking for someone to bring onto the podcast, and Kevin Martin suggested Ashlyn. And I thought, Ashlyn, who? And oh my goodness, I didn't know she was here. So anyway, she's a counselor. So this is her break during the day, and she agreed to come and do this during it. So we're just going to go right at this. Ashlyn, tell us a little bit about your background. What kind of home did you grow up in?
Yeah, I was born originally in West Texas, and out there, the church culture is very much like everyone just kind of goes to church. My family and I went to a Baptist church growing up, and it was my mom's goal for me and my sister to be in church. I had a conversation with her about that, actually, and she said she wanted us in the church and being surrounded by that. And so we were there all the time. My mom worked for like the preschool groups of church. We were always there every Sunday, every Wednesday, every event. Like, we were known in the church pretty well. It just never really exceeded outside of church. We never really talked about the Bible outside of church with my family. We never really prayed for meals. It wasn't really something that we just did. And I always just kind of thought that was normal. I didn't really think that Christ extended outside of church.
Okay.
It seemed like it was you go to Sunday because you have to, rather than you're going to Sunday because like that's what you should do as a Christian or because you want that relationship with Christ.
So would you say that you come from a Christian family?
That's always a hard question when people ask me because it's like my parents or my mom specifically, she grew up going to church and she encouraged us to go to church. And I have some family members that are Christians, but I would never say like my family specifically, like my parents, my sister, and all of us together were a Christian household for sure.
All right. So what happened to you to make this difference, this change?
Yeah, I started coming to His Hill as a camper when I was 8 years old because of my grandparents. And I went every single summer until after I graduated high school. So in total, it was 11 summers of me being a camper. And for most of that part, I kind of just came because camp was really fun and I liked the games and it was just an enjoyable time. And that part of that is what led to me coming to Bible school here. I was a junior during COVID, which was a huge recruiting year for volleyball. And I decided because of that, I was like, I don't want to go to school. Like, if I'm not going to play volleyball in college, like, what's the point of going to college anymore? So I was kind of thinking to myself, like, what can I do after I graduate high school? And His Hill just kind of kept coming back into my mind. And it was one of those things where it was like, you know what, like, I love camp so much. Like, if I could be anywhere for the rest of my life, like, I want to be at camp. I want to live there. Like, it'd be so much fun. And I was like, okay, like maybe I should go to Bible school. Like it has to be just like camp. And yeah, I mean, it's not, as everyone has experienced, it is not like camp at all. But that was really like the decision as to why I was coming to Bible school was because of how much I loved camp and just like wanted to live here. I had no idea what was going to happen in that year or the transformation that was going to happen in my life. It was not something I was imagining at all. So yeah, I graduated high school in 2021 and I moved in. And the very first week of class, I could tell just from all my classmates that they were different. Like something was different. And I couldn't really like point like what it was. It was like they're so much more joyful and they have what seemed like so much more purpose in life in them than what I had, especially after graduating high school. I was lost. I didn't know like what was happening in my life anymore. And it was the very first week of classes. You were teaching Genesis. And, you know, the Genesis stories are those things like you hear growing up as a kid. Like
Right.
you go to church, you're in Sunday school, like you know Genesis, like you know what's happening. But the way you took it, you made it so much more. And I don't fully remember exactly like what it was that was said, but it was a Thursday night class, and it was like one of our last classes, and you had said something along the lines of, have you given Christ your life? Does Christ live in your heart? Something along those lines. And I remember sitting there and just being like, yeah, like I went to church. I've been to church camp. I've done all these different things in my life. Like I'm sure I'm good. And you just kept repeating the question. Like I remember sitting there and you were just repeating the question, and the Lord just kept putting it on my heart. Like, no, like you have not been obedient to me. Like, yeah, you've done this and you've done that, but you have not fully given me your heart and your life. And I remember sitting there and thinking that like, wow, like I am not anywhere that I thought I was.
Wow.
Because prior to Bible school, when I was in high school, compared to my friend group, like I was the good girl. I was the good person. Like I didn't do all these terrible things that they were doing. And so to me, like that was enough. And I was like, I'm pleasing the Lord. Like I am doing good. But then coming here and realizing that, it was like, oh, like I am not anywhere where I need to be. Like I haven't even like dedicated my life to Christ yet. So I went back that night and I talked with my roommate, and the next day was our very first D group, and we were giving a testimony, and I was like, I don't even know where to start. Like, I don't feel like I have a testimony. And so I just opened up right then and there and said, like, I don't think I have Christ in me. And like, I want that. Like, I want to be with everyone else. And it was Brooklyn, and she started sobbing, and she was so excited and so happy. And it happened right there on D group day that I gave my life to Christ and asked him to be in my heart. And yeah, that's kind of how ended up here today.
Yeah, I remember getting a text from Brooklyn right after the D group was over with, and she was elated. She said, Kelly, you're not going to believe this. And she tells me what just happened. That's just so exciting to hear and to be reminded of what happened with you. You're not unique in that, in being a student that comes to Bible school. Mm-hmm. Our prayer every year is that the Lord would send students whose heart is ready, wherever they are, whether they are saved or not saved. We had a student one time call and tell Charlie, listen, I'm not a Christian, but I got some things I want to work on. And I've had some friends go to his hill, and if I could get a little bit of what they've got while I'm working on these things, well, that'd be fine. And Charlie told him, well, look, we're not necessarily looking for Christians. We're looking for people whose heart is ready. And, he sends us people from all walks of life, different places with the Lord. And we've seen a number of students come thinking they were Christians because they go to church, they read their Bible, their parents are Christians. I've heard those answers. And then, it's just amazing to see them come to know Christ. And then to watch them walk with the Lord after is a really exciting thing. Just a privilege that the Lord gives us to witness this. And so this is really exciting. So what was that year like then after that?
It was both really good and also very, very hard. The Lord definitely was working in my life. He was breaking me down and pulling out all these different things, the pride, the selfishness, the things in my life that I was holding on to, and taking those and breaking them down to better me. And I mean, in the moment, I didn't recognize it, but definitely after that year, and even after my second year, like I recognized how the Lord was just working in my life to completely transform me into being the person that he created me to be. And that was something that I prayed about a lot, was, Lord, like, I've taken this step and I want you to, whatever it takes, to refine me to be who you want me to be and to live the life that you want me to live and how I was created. And so it took a lot of sacrifice to live out those things and to lose a lot, but it's led me to where I am now. And now I have a relationship with the Father who cares about me and loves me. And I think that was so rewarding in the moment, even despite how hard it was to go through.
You're reminding me of some things that we're actually going through in our quick reminders. In the book of James, he says, in chapter 4, he's talking about the issue, the problem that we have as believers in relationship with others is me. You know, we always think of it as being the other person, you know, our at best, it's the other person and me, you know, but we can't leave. We always want to have that other person in there. But he says, you know, what is the source of quarrels and conflicts among you is not the source your pleasures that wage war in your members. You know, that, you know, you're the problem. And, you know, you're talking about, you know, what the Lord has been doing in your heart since you've come to faith in him. And he's, from what you're saying, he's been revealing, you know, you and who you are apart from him, and the darkness that's there. And he says, you know, later in that chapter, he says to, he says that he's opposed to the proud and gives grace to the humble. Then he says, submit, therefore, to God. And, you know, he goes on from there, too. He says, submit, therefore, to God, draw near to God, he'll draw near to you. Then he gets that, be miserable and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned, let your laughter be turned into mourning and your joy to gloom. And he goes on and says, humble yourself. And, you know, that verse, you know, let your, you know, be miserable and mourn. What is he talking about? And I think what he's doing is he's saying, he's working in our heart to show us who we are in and of ourselves. And, but, you know, in that, he's saying, don't stay there, but draw near to me. Yeah. To know him. So how has he done that? How has he, you know, in the time since leaving his hill, you were here for another summer, weren't you?
This is my third summer.
Yeah, okay. So in leaving, you know, after Bible school, and, you know, that's the hard thing, right? I mean, all the students, that's really the catalyst for this podcast, is that for decades, you know, the students go home, and then we just hear, you know, how hard that is. And we think, okay, how do we encourage them? You know, Charlie and I've talked about it many times over the years, and our concern was that we do too much and run the risk of the students being dependent on us. And so, you know, we've held off on different ideas, but the podcast came out with, well, this maybe would be different. And the Lord showed us that this is what he wants, and that people, alumni have been encouraged, as well as others, in Christ, and reminded of what's true. But anyway, back to, that's why the podcast started, the catalyst for it. So I'm sure you experienced the same thing. You know, so you come to know Christ. He's working in your heart, revealing who you are apart from him, showing you who you are in him. And then you got to go home. What was that like?
It was hard. I think a lot of it was, it took me a minute to kind of recognize that I myself was like, oh yeah, I just did 2 years of Bible school. I'll be good. I'm going to a Christian university in Colorado. Like I'm doing pretty good. Like, I'm going to keep this up and keep this going. And my first semester of school, like, hit me like a ton of bricks. It was so hard. And I had experienced almost like a rocky point in my relationship with the Lord. And it wasn't that I didn't think that he wasn't there. It was more of, for the first time, like, I didn't have a set schedule. Or first time in 2 years, I didn't have a set schedule, and I didn't have all these different Bible classes that I was taking, and like the people around me weren't in like the same stage of life as me and walking the same life as I was for the last 2 years. And so I came into this point where I was like, you know, skipping out on my quiet time and just taking things away slowly that I had here at the Lord, or here at the Hill, and I could feel myself suffering in that way relationally with the Lord, and being like, man, like I don't feel the Lord. I don't feel like he's present. I don't know what's happening in my life right now. Like, I just need him and I need help. And the Lord was so gracious to him, like, put on my heart. It's like, because you're not putting that effort in either. And I think that was something that's challenged me the last 2 years of being at school, is that even with how hard it is and how busy you get, like, you still have to put in the effort with the Lord, because, yeah, he's always there, but you also have to always be there with him. And you need to be putting in that work too, and putting in your side of things. And it definitely has not been easy. Like, every year I'm like, okay, this is going to be better. This semester's going to be better. I'm going to put more effort in. I'm going to, like, prioritize my quiet time with him and prioritize spending time with him and going to him with things. And, I mean, I can't do anything on my own, so I fail, obviously. And it's been a challenge. It's been hard. But it's also been such a good learning curve to learn like how to live with Christ after the hill, because you're here and you're surrounded by it 24/7. And it's almost like you have nothing better to do than to talk about Christ and to be with Jesus. Whereas as soon as you leave and you're in a secular world, you really have to fight for it and put it in, because the devil likes to kill, steal, and destroy. And he's going to do anything that he can to take that joy away from you and take away the things that you have from the Lord. And so just being able to prioritize that time with him and recognize that above all else, you need to be with him and spend time with him, even if it is just coming to him and falling to your knees and saying, Lord, help me with today.
Yeah. Yeah, you're describing, what Jesus has prescribed. He says I'm the vine, you're the branches. He who abides in me produces much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. It's that abiding relationship, that staying with him. And, I think when we go through those rocky times like what you described, it's not that he has moved or he has changed, but we have. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever, according to Scripture. And so if something has changed in the relationship, it is us.
Yeah.
We're not abiding. And of course, that abiding, Hebrews tells us that without faith, it is impossible to please him. I was teaching one time at one of the centers, and the students that week, all week, were asking me, because the emphasis in Hebrews is Jesus being better and this rest that we're to enter into. And all week, these students were asking me, from Monday, they were asking me, how do I rest? How do I rest? And I kept telling them, I'm gonna tell you, but not yet. And you can see the frustration in their body language. It just and it crescendoed throughout the week. And I got to Friday, or we got to Friday, and it was the second to last class or the last class. I don't remember for sure. And I told them, all week you've been asking me, how do we rest? And now I'm going to tell you. And people grabbed pens and pencils, and because we didn't have many computers at the time, it tells you how far back that was. And they sat up and they were ready to write down what the answer was. And we saw in chapter 10, and the righteous shall live by faith. In that chapter, he tells us to hold fast, to enter in. Well, how? By faith. And those students were there was a number of them sitting together, and they all just dropped their pens on the table in frustration. Charlie once told me in a little time in my life, Kelly, you can never get away from faith. And it aggravated me. But I couldn't get that out of my head until I realized he's right. I can never get away from dependence upon Jesus if I'm going to live this life that he lives in me for. And so I can identify with that. I can. We had a time after being here for 23 years of leaving his hill. Never thought we would. As a matter of fact, it was just a few months before. If you would have asked me, I would have told you my plan was to die here. I loved my job, didn't want to do anything else, couldn't see me doing anything else. And Arlene and I will just grow old here. What are they going to do with us? Put us on the street? Of course not. And there's a cemetery just up the road here, so we're good to go. And the Lord changed all that very quickly. We didn't see it coming. And we ended up leaving for 6 years, and it was rough. It was really hard. And the Lord asked me from the very beginning, okay, Kelly, and it was so clear. I can remember the first time that the Lord just asked me this while we were gone. He says, okay, do you believe that I am sovereign? Yes, Lord. Do you believe that I have this situation in my hand? Yes. Then, Kelly, are you going to live what you've been teaching and preaching all these years? And I was, and really it was embarrassing. I was like, oh, Lord, I trust you. You can't explain how he does it, but you trust him. Yeah. And you just get up. You get out of bed in the morning, and you And he is so faithful to show you when you're not trusting him. When those moments come, Lord, I trust you, and keep moving. Does that kind of describe what was going on for you at school?
Yeah, trust has definitely been a huge thing for me for the last 2 years, because, I was a planner all my life of like what's going to happen, what's next, and Bible school was never on my mind of what I was going to do. And then the Lord said, I want you to go to school in Colorado. And I was like, God, I've lived in Texas my entire life. Like, I don't do good in the cold. Like, that is not for me. I thought I was never leaving Texas.
It's hard to get a Texan to go anywhere.
Yeah, I was never planning to leave Texas. And he's like, you're gonna go to school in Colorado, this tiny little Christian school outside Denver. And I was like, okay, Lord, like, I trust you. And it was hard. I didn't like it first semester. I wanted to go home, but I was like, no, the Lord has called me here. And so I'm going to stay and see what happens. And when just thinking about that and, the thoughts of transferring or going somewhere else, going home, I had to remind myself, it's like, you didn't want to even go to Bible school. And you went and you listened to the Lord, and he provided so much for you there. He has never let you down, and he's not planning on starting now. And so just trust in him in that, you don't understand what's happening in the moment, but you can look back and see the goodness of the Lord through it. And that's pretty much been the story of these last 2 years, especially at school, and just every semester going through something different. And then a few months later, being able to look back and be like, that's what the Lord was doing in my life. And so just being able, especially because I graduate next May, and I have no idea where I'm going to go, what's going to happen, but just reminding myself, like, the Lord has me, and I can trust him in that he's going to lead me where I need to be and to be able to enhance his kingdom.
Amen. So you've come back for 3 summer camps. This is the third?
This is my third.
Okay, this is the third.
Yeah.
Okay, on staff. Have you been a counselor every time?
Yep.
Okay. Well, why do you do that?
I think part of it is, a small part of it, if I'm being completely honest, is that I don't want to let go of the hill. And I don't want to think about that day when it happens. But growing up for 11 summers, the counselors in the ministry here had such an impact on me. And then coming here for Bible school had a major impact on me. And so part of me was like, I want to be able to give back to the Lord and give back to this ministry that has given me so much. And then also now, the first 2 summers, just building those relationships with those kids is so incredible. Having campers this week specifically coming up to me that I had 3 years ago and remembering me and talking about the memories and what I did in their life, it's a feeling that you can't get rid of. And I think about it every day, just what a blessing it is that we have this opportunity to pour into these kids' lives and to build relationships with them and to teach them about Jesus. It truly is, Connor said it, like the dream job. Yeah. Like there's nothing more in my life that I would want to do right now specifically than to be with these kids and to teach them about Jesus. And I love it. And if Connor asked me, I would do it every single year for as long as he needs me to, because I just find so much joy in it. And I always have, and it's such a blessing.
I think it's something you said that I think is really important for us to think on as believers, and that's to be a blessing where we have been blessed. To give back where we've been given. It's great encouragement. For one thing, it's really encouragement to other believers. When staff see, what the Lord's done in your heart and the change that's been made, and then see you coming back and you pouring into others, that's an incredible encouragement to the staff. But also, like you said, to the kids that come to talk to you. I have memories, as old as I am, I can remember some things when I was a counselor, and I can remember these kids and the moments the Lord gave me with them. And the encouragement that I have to this day in having a front row seat, witnessing the Lord at work, through this goofball who will just trust him, open your mouth. And, it's just so, I'm 59. And I can tell you that the Lord used that, that time as a counselor to help mold and shape me, preparing me for what he had for me today. And, that's just, it's an encouragement to see that, to see you guys come back like this and to serve like this. And it's sure not because of the money.
No.
Oh my goodness.
Nope.
If the listeners knew what you were being, I almost said paid, and that's not even accurate,
Yeah.
but they knew what you were getting, and this is your third summer. That's really encouraging.
Yeah, and that's another point of like just trusting like the Lord with it. Like coming back, especially these last 2 summers, being in college, having lots of money that has to be paid for school, and I'm living off campus in an apartment next year. And so I almost thought to myself, like, oh, Lord, like I really want to do this, but how am I going to afford not earning money for a few months?
Yeah.
And God's like, I called you to this. Trust me in that I will provide for you in this way.
Wow. That's a great challenge and a good reminder for all of us. You've probably heard from people, you're crazy.
Yep.
Yeah. And when I hear that, I think about Scripture telling us that, we need to be foolish that we may be wise. And that doesn't mean think of the dumbest thing that you can do. It means foolish in the eyes of the flesh, I think is more accurate. A more accurate way of explaining it. That our flesh tells us, no, we've got to get a job, a summer job that will pay as much as we can get so that we can, pay off some of these things. But if the Lord has clearly worked in our heart, that's where we need to be, trusting Him with no expectations.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that, the Lord's going to make money fall out of a tree for you. It doesn't mean that the money's going to be there to pay for the apartment.
Right.
It may mean that He's completely changing your plans.
Yeah.
but it's His life, so it's His business. And so I appreciate your heart in that. Okay, so you're going to finish up school.
Yep.
And what are you hoping to do?
Yeah, I play volleyball still at my school. I'm club president for our club volleyball team. And so athletics has always been huge in my life, and it's something that has been huge in my family too. And so I've always just loved it and always knew that that's somewhere I wanted to be, was working in athletics. And so right now I have the opportunity of taking my degree and working in, it's called a sports information director. So just a communication department, working between schools, conferences, stuff like that, and just communicating with the conference, communicating with the NCAA, things like that within your athletics department. And so I'm hoping to be able to find a college that has a pretty good athletics department that has an open spot for communications to, work there and continue on in athletics.
Okay, good. And this is something that the Lord's been teaching me since leaving staff, is that, I'm in the business world now. For the most time, I get to do this one day out of the week, and then I get to teach still some and preach some, but it's different. What I have found is that the business is my ministry, and there are incredible opportunities that the Lord will bring your way as you just go about the next thing there is to do. To go back and finish up school when you find a job, and you get up in the morning, and the first few days are going to be exciting, and after a few weeks it's not going to be that exciting. You'll probably love it because it's what you've been preparing for, hopefully, but you'll find that there's so much opportunity that you don't even have to figure out how to make it happen, that the Lord brings to you. And again, the trust comes. To trust the Lord for those opportunities and trust the Lord in those opportunities, to be used as He wishes. And you'll find that really interesting things happen. Crazy things happen. I was no longer an official preacher or teacher, but this guy walks up to me after leaving here. We were attending this church, and nowhere in the area. We're in another state. And, so they don't really know that much about, what I had been doing. This guy just walks up to me and says, "Hey, will you disciple me?" What? Or get into the work truck, and I'm pulling out of the driveway, and the guy that's riding with me looks over and says, Kelly, would you pray with me? I just, what? And, you put God in a box and you figure that this is ministry. If I'm going to be in ministry, then, I need to teach Sunday school, or I need to go on a mission trip, or I need to be a counselor at camp. And yes, all those things are opportunity for ministry, but ministry is really what? It's ministering the life of Christ. And if he's my life, then the moment I wake up, it's time for ministry. It's time to abide in him, to trust him, and to obey him. So anyway, I appreciate that. Well, Ashlyn, I hate to do this, but I know you're on a tight schedule, so this is going to be a short interview, but it's been a profitable one, though. It's been an encouraging one. It's just good to see you.
Yeah, thanks, you too.
Yeah, to hear that you're here and then you come into the room, this is great. Yeah. But so anyway, I appreciate you doing this. Thanks for giving us this time in the middle of this camp schedule.
Absolutely. I was really excited to do it. I was happy to.
We are almost through our first week of scholarship camp. This stretch has been a bit rainy, but that certainly has not put a damper on this kickoff to summer camp. Please keep praying for us here, that we would show and share Christ in all we say and do, and that the campers would see him during their time on the hilltop. Thanks again for tuning in to this week's episode of the His Hill podcast. And as always, remember to keep your eyes fixed on Christ. I'm Lizzie, and we'll see you next week.